Hey there, this is Erica from Ever Educating, and this channel is all about teaching tips for college instructors, as well as some ed tech and online teaching tips more recently. And so if that interests you, go ahead and subscribe below. But today we're talking about strengthening your instructor presence when teaching an online course. And so I have 3 strategies here, from very easy to more time consuming, and then a bonus tip that's like the least time consuming ever. It's 8 minutes across the whole semester. But there's just some ideas of how to show your students that you're a real person, you're a real human on the other side of that screen, and you are there for them to help them with their learning. So keep in mind you might have to change some of these approaches depending on any accommodations that are needed for your students. I would say video, or at least audio, is the best way to strengthen your instructor presence in an online class, but I know not everybody has the skills, the time, the inclination to take that approach. So my first tip here for increasing your presence is by adding graphics that show students A, your personality, and B, the time and effort you're putting into making your course more engaging visually, more interactive, more multimodal. And so I've mentioned Canva before. I have a whole video about it and how I use it to teach. But in this case, you can use it to create, for example here, just like these small, simple graphics for your course to kind of break up all the text that you use in it. And in this case, I just have this banner that I created. My file size here is 1000 by 200. I'm using Canvas as my LMS, so that's how that scale will look like. But you can customize the design that you'd like, right? Just click create design, custom dimensions, and that's fine. You can choose whatever dimensions you want. But Canva has a lot of templates you could use. For example, this in particular is literally Zoom background templates. So rather than having to find them or scour the internet for a photo that's not copyrighted or whatever, you can literally just go here and download these and use them as your background. So even that, maybe changing it up to make it personable to you. But if you're not doing any synchronous whatsoever, then like I said, so I have here the week 1, and I have this element because you're talking about the course and technology and just introducing yourselves to each other. So I have my 2 little students here with masks, and then talking about introducing each other and how to use the navigation of the technology for the course. And then week 2, we start talking about writing and research, and so I changed up this very simply, and then going forward, changing up it as well. And so this can just be banners that you make, but you can also, add memes, that you create or that you find throughout the pages that you create, text-wise when you're explaining assignments, right? So if you don't want to do any video or audio stuff, then my first advice is add visuals to your course site so students can kind of be more invested and more engaged in the material, because they know that, okay, it's not just giant blocks of text. There's some at least visual here, breaking things up, making things more interesting. And so you can make these really fun rather than I did, which was more just informative of the topic of each week. You can do, a cartoon type of thing or some kind of theme to make it more interesting that way as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, video is definitely the way to increase your instructor presence the most in an online class, especially if you're not doing any synchronous lessons. And in this case, I have a whole playlist about creating videos for teaching. So I go over using Loom, using QuickTime, using Zoom. So you can definitely check out those later on. I'll link them below. But as you see here, one idea I have is, rather than just doing video lessons where you teach them things, actually start each week with an overview video. And so in this case, it's not heavily edited. It's just you sitting in front of the camera and telling them, here's what's coming up this week, to give them a sense of, all right, so this week we're doing these things, good to know. So it's just like a casual, hey, I'm here. I didn't just create all this material and then left you to it. Every single week I'm creating these videos, or every single week I am, making sure that I reveal to you that I exist here. I'm ready to answer any questions. So even if you pre-record these, you can still have that sense of, okay, there she is. She is here to answer my questions. You can make that clear in this intro video. And so literally in these modules, I just start the first one, and all it is here's the video. Okay. I would recommend closed captioning these just in case. Seeing if your school has something that you can use. If not, you can just put it to YouTube and then edit the YouTube closed captioning, so it takes a lot less time. I would keep these videos very short to make the closed captioning easy, but also because you don't want to have a 15-minute intro video, right? So I would suggest 5, maybe 8 minutes max, introducing, each week. And so again, that's another way of getting your presence more solidly put into your online class. Again, especially if you're doing an asynchronous course throughout the whole semester. But maybe you don't want to actually be on camera, thinking of these overview videos. Another option is to do screen sharing videos and have your voice being heard by your students, and as a reminder of, oh yes, they are here, they are talking to me, I can hear them even if I can't see them. And so one way of using this is when you do assignment feedback, perhaps rather than just typing out feedback or putting in comments, you actually record yourself on the screen going through and saying, I love this point here, but make sure you work on this here, you're missing this, but great job doing that. So you can actually just have a video or just audio recording of you going over your students' work and getting feedback rather than having to write anything down. So that can be another way of getting students to hear your voice and remember that you are a real person, there on the other side of the screen. So for example, this was before, any of this pandemic. I just used this in a regular face-to-face class, but I had my students who were struggling to draft their intros to these articles they were writing. And so what I did is I literally recorded myself going over drafting an intro to an article. And as you can see here, it's 18 minutes. It's pretty long, but I wasn't, teaching to, an online course. I was teaching face-to-face, and then this was just a supplementary material. So I would suggest keeping it shorter than this. But so here they watched it, and literally it's just me going through, and let me mute this, going through and saying, okay, I had this idea here in this intro, as a source text, and then here's me writing out the intro, right? And I just fast forwarded that portion of it. And so in this case, you can do it to introduce activities or, assignment sheets, for example. So I do that here where I was out sick the first week. And so I recorded myself going through an assignment sheet and just going into detail on, what they needed to do for this assignment. And then I answered questions in person when I, returned the week afterward. So you can do this to introduce assignments, or you can do this to give feedback to assignments. I think either would work really well with your students, reminding them, you are there, you're ready to take questions, to clarify any feedback that you give them, whatever the case may be. So this is a third way of really strengthening your instructor presence in an online class. For my bonus tip, maybe you already saw it. So what small itty bitty thing that takes 30 seconds at a time to do, and that's to theme the titles of your modules. And so as you can see here, in week 1, I write research papers, not tragedies. Okay, so that's a reference to a Panic at the Disco song. Week 2, look what you made me write, right? Instead of look what you made me do. And then rolling in the research, right? Rather than rolling in the deep. And so each week I will have a themed title to my modules. So this is a very small thing, takes 30 seconds, to do for each week, where I've, put a little bit of personality into my course design. Figure out just small things you can do to make it a bit more eye-catching. So like Easter eggs in your syllabus or in your Canvas that does not take more than just typing out some words. So this could be fun too for you, but I think it could help, again, show a bit of your personality to your students when so much else is kind of really covered because you're not really seeing them in person. You're just, through the screen. Click like if you haven't already, and if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear about them in the comment section below. I'll see you next time with a new video.